In a small desert town, where the sun scorched the earth and the wind carried whispers of hardship, a solitary gas station stood as a beacon for weary travelers. It was here, under the relentless heat of midday, that Jack Reeves, a soldier just returning from deployment, would unknowingly step into a storm that would forever change his life and the lives of those around him. Jack pulled his truck into the gas station, the engine humming softly as he switched it off. Stepping out, he took a deep breath, inhaling the warm, dusty air. He was a tall man, with a sturdy build that spoke of discipline and strength. His military demeanor, straight back, shoulders squared, set him apart from the usual patrons of this rundown gas station. He wore a faded t-shirt that bore the emblem of his unit, a subtle reminder of his recent service. As he moved to fill his truck with fuel, he didn't realize that his very presence was about to attract the attention of a notorious biker gang that had been a scourge on the town for months. The roar of engines cut through the silence as a group of bikers pulled into the gas station, their machines spitting gravel as they parked. The gang was known for their aggressive behavior and territorial antics, having made life difficult for the townspeople with their threats and intimidation. They dismounted, clad in leather jackets adorned with patches that told tales of their misdeeds, and their laughter echoed off the walls of the gas station. As Jack continued to fill his tank, he noticed the gang's leader, an imposing figure with a wild mane of hair and a sneer that could freeze fire, eyeing him with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. The leader sauntered over, flanked by his followers, their presence a looming shadow that seemed to darken the already hot afternoon. "Look at this guy," the leader mocked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A soldier in our town. What are you gonna do? Fight us off with your little toy gun?" His words dripped with derision, inciting laughter from his companions. Jack turned, meeting the leader's gaze with a calm yet piercing look. "I'm just here to fill my tank," he replied evenly, his voice steady despite the underlying tension. He had learned in the military that staying composed in the face of provocation was key. But the leader was not about to let it go. "Why don't you show us what you've got, soldier?" the leader taunted, stepping closer, puffing his chest out as if trying to intimidate Jack. The atmosphere thickened, the laughter of the gang dimming as they sensed the brewing storm. In an instant, the leader lunged at Jack, the fight erupting without warning. Jack had been trained for combat, and his reflexes kicked in. He sidestepped the leader's attack, grabbing his arm and using the biker's momentum against him. With a swift movement, Jack flipped the leader onto the ground, the thud of leather against asphalt echoing in the stillness of the gas station. The other bikers froze momentarily, shock spreading across their faces. Jack's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through him as he kept his eyes on the gang, ready for any retaliation. But the leader was quick to scramble to his feet, fury igniting in his eyes. "Get him," he shouted, rallying his gang, but before they could act, the unmistakable sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. As if on cue, the local police arrived, their lights flashing like a beacon of authority. The sight of law enforcement sent the bikers scattering, their bravado evaporating in the face of potential consequences. Jack stood there, breathing heavily, a mixture of adrenaline and disbelief flooding through him. The officers quickly assessed the situation, separating Jack from the retreating gang. "What happened here?" one officer inquired, looking from Jack to the remaining bikers. Jack recounted the incident, explaining how he had simply been filling up when the gang had confronted him. The officers exchanged glances, clearly familiar with the gang's reputation. "Thanks for handling that," one of the officers said, clapping Jack on the back. "We've been trying to put a stop to their antics for months." As the bikers vanished into the desert landscape, the townspeople who had gathered at the gas station began to emerge from the shadows. Whispers of admiration rippled through the crowd, and before long, Jack found himself surrounded by locals, their faces a mix of gratitude and curiosity. Among them was a woman named Sarah, whose bright eyes shone with respect, and her younger brother Tommy, who looked up to Jack with admiration. "You stood up to them," Sarah said, her voice filled with awe. "No one ever does that." Jack, still catching his breath, shrugged off the praise, feeling a sense of unease wash over him. "I just did what anyone would do," he replied, but deep down, he felt a stirring sense of purpose begin to take root. News of Jack's confrontation with the gang spread quickly throughout the town. The initial shock gave way to a burgeoning sense of hope. Jack soon learned that the bikers had been terrorizing the residents for far too long, their presence a constant reminder of fear and instability. Many had suffered in silence, their complaints falling on deaf ears, dismissed by authorities who seemed powerless to act. As the days passed, Jack felt an increasing sense of responsibility to help the community. His military training had instilled in him a desire to protect and serve, and now he found himself in a position to make a difference. Encouraged by Sarah and Tommy, he began to engage more with the locals, listening to their stories, understanding their struggles, and recognizing the strength that lay within the community. But as Jack stepped further into this new role, he also began to notice the simmering tension between the townspeople and the sheriff, who had cautioned against vigilantism. The sheriff, a well-meaning but weary man, had seen too many attempts to take matters into one's own hands end in disaster. He warned Jack to tread carefully, emphasizing that while he admired Jack's bravery, there were lines that should not be crossed. Yet Jack felt a pull toward action, a desire to stand up not just for himself but for everyone who had been bullied and threatened. He decided to delve deeper into the gang's operations, seeking ways to undermine their grip on the town. This newfound determination would soon set him on a path fraught with challenges, testing not just his strength but also his resolve to protect those who could not protect themselves. Little did Jack know that this was just the beginning of his journey, one that would transform him from a soldier returning home into a local hero, a guardian of a community striving to reclaim its spirit and safety in the face of darkness. The desert town, once a backdrop for despair, was beginning to stir with the promise of resilience, all ignited by one soldier's courageous stand at a gas station that fateful day. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty streets, Jack stood resolute, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The fight for the town had only just begun. The days following Jack's confrontation at the gas station felt electric with change. A newfound energy coursed through the small desert town, igniting conversations in the coffee shop, stirring the hearts of the weary. Jack Reeves had unknowingly stepped into a leadership role, and with each interaction, the townspeople grew more emboldened. He found himself at the center of a burgeoning movement, a desire to reclaim their community from the clutches of the biker gang. Jack began to regularly meet with Sarah and her brother Tommy, who quickly became his allies in the fight against the gang. Sarah, a spirited woman with a knack for organizing, had a network of contacts that extended throughout the town. She was determined to rally the residents, to turn their fear into action. Tommy, eager to prove himself, absorbed every word Jack shared about resilience and courage. Together, the three of them spent evenings at the local diner, planning their strategy over cups of coffee and slices of pie. As they brainstormed, Jack learned more about the gang's reign of terror. Residents had endured months of harassment, threats at the local bar, intimidation at the grocery store, and even vandalism of their properties. The gang had established an unsettling presence, transforming the once peaceful town into a landscape of fear. Yet, beneath the surface of despair, Jack discovered a strong undercurrent of defiance among the locals, a desire to fight back, to reclaim their town. One evening, as the sun set behind the horizon, casting a warm glow over the diner, Sarah stood up, her voice steady and resolute. "We can't let them push us around anymore. We have to show them that we won't be afraid." Her words resonated with the small group of supporters gathered around the table, igniting a fire in their hearts. "Let's hold a community meeting," Tommy suggested, his youthful enthusiasm infectious. "We can get everyone together and share what's been happening. If we stand united, we can send a message that we're done being scared." Jack nodded, impressed by their determination. "That's a great idea. We need to create a sense of solidarity. If we can show the gang that we're willing to stand up for each other, they'll think twice before crossing us again." With a plan in place, they worked diligently to spread the word about the upcoming meeting. Flyers were posted on community boards, announcements were made at the local church, and whispers of the gathering circulated throughout the town. On the night of the meeting, the community center buzzed with energy, filled with the chatter of residents who had come to share their stories and stand together. Jack stood at the front of the room, flanked by Sarah and Tommy. As he looked out at the faces of the townspeople, some familiar, others new, he felt a swell of pride. These were the people he had committed to protect, and he knew they were stronger together. "Thank you all for coming," Jack began, his voice steady. "I know many of you have been affected by the gang's presence in our town. You're not alone, and we're here to stand together." Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Jack then opened the floor for residents to share their experiences. One by one, they stepped forward, recounting stories of intimidation, threats, and property damage. An elderly man spoke of how the gang had vandalized his shop, leaving him too scared to open his doors. A young mother shared her fear of taking her children to the park, worried that they might encounter the bikers. Each story added weight to their collective resolve. As the evening unfolded, the atmosphere shifted from one of despair to one of empowerment. Jack encouraged everyone to discuss ways they could take action, emphasizing the importance of community vigilance. "We need to look out for one another," he urged. "If you see something, say something. We can report any suspicious activity to the sheriff, but we must be vigilant." After hours of discussion, the meeting concluded with a sense of purpose. Residents left the community center with newfound determination, ready to reclaim their town from the shadows. However, the sheriff was not entirely supportive of Jack's newfound leadership. He had observed the meeting from the back of the room, his expression a mixture of concern and disapproval. As the crowd dispersed, he approached Jack, a weary frown creasing his forehead. "Jack, I admire your passion, but I have to warn you," the sheriff said, his voice low. "Taking matters into your own hands can lead to trouble. You don't know what these bikers are capable of." Jack met the sheriff's gaze, determination sparking in his eyes. "I understand your concern, Sheriff, but we can't just sit back and do nothing. The people of this town deserve to feel safe in their own homes." "I get that, but we need to handle this carefully." "I can't protect you if you're provoking them," the sheriff replied, his tone firm. Jack nodded, acknowledging the sheriff's point, but his resolve remained unshaken. "I appreciate your advice, but the people need hope. They need to see that someone is willing to stand up for them." The sheriff sighed, the weight of the town's troubles heavy on his shoulders. "Just promise me you'll be careful. I can't have you becoming a target." With that, Jack returned to his newfound mission, knowing that the sheriff's warnings were rooted in concern. The town was becoming more united, but the gang's presence loomed over them like a dark cloud. As days turned into weeks, Jack's efforts began to yield results. The community rallied together, forming neighborhood watch groups and sharing information. They organized cleanup days to beautify the town, reclaiming the spaces that the bikers had sullied with their presence. Children played in the streets again, laughter replacing the silence that had once gripped the town. Yet, beneath the surface of this newfound camaraderie, tension simmered. The biker gang was not blind to the changes taking place. they had noticed the shift in the townspeople's attitudes and the growing resistance. Jack knew that they would retaliate, and it was only a matter of time before the conflict escalated. One evening, as Jack was preparing to meet with Sarah and Tommy to discuss their next steps, he received an unexpected visit from an old friend, Mark, who had served alongside him in the military. Mark had heard about Jack's efforts and came to offer his support. "I've got your back, brother," he said, his expression serious. "I know what you're up against, and I'm here to help." Jack welcomed Mark with open arms, grateful for his presence. "I could use the support, especially now that things are heating up with the gang." Mark nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We'll need to be smart about this. We can't let them catch us off guard." As they strategized late into the night, Jack felt a sense of hope rising within him. With allies like Mark, Sarah, and Tommy by his side, he knew that they had the potential to make a significant impact in their fight against the gang. But the looming threat of violence hung over them, a constant reminder that their struggle was far from over. The next day, as Jack drove through town, he noticed a group of bikers lingering at the outskirts, their presence an unmistakable sign that they were watching. He felt a surge of anger but also a determination to confront the threat head-on. Jack gathered his allies, urging them to stay vigilant. "We need to keep our eyes open. The gang is watching us, and they won't take our resistance lightly." As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the desert landscape, Jack stood firm in his resolve. The town was beginning to awaken from its slumber, and he was ready to fight for its freedom. Little did he know that the confrontation that awaited them would test their unity, courage, and the very fabric of their community. In the face of adversity, Jack's transformation from a solitary soldier to a beacon of hope for the town was becoming evident. The struggle was far from over, but together, they would rise to face the challenges ahead, forging a path toward reclaiming their peace and safety. The stage was set for the next chapter in their fight against the darkness that threatened to engulf them, and Jack was determined to lead the charge. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in the small desert town grew increasingly tense. Jack Reeves had ignited a spirit of resistance among the townspeople, but the looming presence of the biker gang was a constant reminder of the danger they faced. Whispers of retaliation circulated, and Jack knew it was only a matter of time before the gang would strike back. Jack spent his days working closely with Sarah, Tommy, and his friend Mark, strategizing ways to fortify their defenses and gather intelligence on the gang's activities. They established a network of informants, townspeople who were willing to report any suspicious movements. Jack also reached out to the sheriff, hoping to coordinate efforts, but the sheriff remained cautious, reluctant to put the community in further danger. One evening, while meeting in the community center, Jack and his allies gathered around a table littered with maps and notes. The walls were adorned with flyers they had created for the Neighborhood Watch program, which had successfully mobilized a significant portion of the town. "All right, let's go over what we know about the gang's operations," Jack said, pointing to a map of the town where the gang had been most active. "From what we've heard, they're using the abandoned mine on the outskirts as a base of operations. We need to figure out how they're connected to the illegal activities that have been plaguing the town." Sarah leaned forward, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I heard from Mrs. Thompson at the grocery store that she saw some of the bikers moving boxes in and out of the mine late at night. She thinks they might be using it as a drug distribution point." "That aligns with what I've seen," Mark added, recalling his own observations. "They're making the mine their stronghold. If we can gather enough evidence, we might be able to convince the sheriff to take action." Tommy, wide-eyed with excitement, chimed in, "Maybe we can set up a surveillance operation. If we can catch them in the act, it would prove they're up to no good." Jack nodded, impressed by Tommy's enthusiasm. "That's a solid idea, but we need to be careful. We can't risk anyone getting hurt. I'll lead the operation, and we can take shifts keeping watch. If we see anything suspicious, we can report it immediately." As they laid out their plan, the group felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just victims of the gang's intimidation, they were becoming proactive, determined to reclaim their town. Jack felt a surge of hope. If they could expose the gang's activities, they might finally put an end to their reign of terror. Over the next few nights, Jack and his allies took turns keeping watch near the mine. They parked a safe distance away, using binoculars to observe the entrance, documenting any unusual activity. Tension hung in the air as they sat in silence, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Each creak of the wind or rustle of leaves sent their nerves into overdrive. On one particularly still night, as the moon hung low in the sky, Jack spotted movement. "There!" By the entrance, he whispered urgently, nudging Sarah, who was perched beside him. They focused their binoculars on the shadowy figures emerging from the mine. A group of bikers appeared, loading large crates onto their motorcycles. "Do you see that?" Sarah gasped, her eyes wide with realization. "They're definitely up to something. We need to get this information to the sheriff." Jack quickly jotted down notes, capturing the details of what they observed. "We'll document everything we see tonight, and then I'll head to the sheriff in the morning. This could be the evidence we need to get him on board." As the group continued to watch, they noticed more bikers arriving. Tensions heightened when they saw the gang leader step forward, barking orders. The sight of him brought back memories of the confrontation at the gas station, igniting a sense of anger and determination in Jack's chest. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "Stay calm," he reminded his friends, sensing their agitation. "We're just here to gather information. No one needs to get hurt." However, their resolve would soon be tested. In the early hours of dawn, as they prepared to leave, Jack's heart sank when he spotted headlights approaching. A convoy of motorcycles roared down the dusty road, and his instinct screamed at him to retreat. "We need to go now," he urged, signaling to his friends. They hastily packed up their equipment and slipped into the shadows, but not before the gang members noticed them. The air crackled with tension as the bikers dismounted and approached, their aggressive demeanor unmistakable. Jack's mind raced as he considered their options. Should they confront the gang, or should they escape and regroup? Suddenly, the gang leader's voice rang out, cutting through the silence. Well. Looks like we've got some little spies in our midst. What were you hoping to find out here?" He took a step forward, his eyes glinting with menace. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to back down. "We're just passing through," he said, his voice steady, masking the adrenaline surging through him. "No trouble here." The gang leader scoffed, a cruel smile creeping across his face. "You think you can just waltz in and out of our territory? You're making a big mistake, soldier." Jack's friends shifted nervously, but he held his ground. "We're not afraid of you," he declared, summoning the courage that had propelled him through countless challenges. The gang erupted in laughter, their jeering filling the air. "What's this? A soldier thinks he can protect a bunch of weak townsfolk?" The leader stepped closer, a threatening aura surrounding him. "You're outnumbered and outmatched. You think you're some kind of hero? You're nothing but a joke." In that moment, Jack felt a wave of anger wash over him. He knew that if he didn't stand firm now, the gang would only grow bolder. "I might be just one man, but I'm not alone. The town is with me, and we're done living in fear." The gang leader's expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. He glanced back at his followers, and for a split second, Jack sensed a crack in their bravado. But before he could capitalize on that moment, the leader barked a command, rallying his crew. "Enough of this. Get him," he shouted, and the gang surged forward, a wave of leather and aggression. Jack's instincts kicked in, and he quickly turned to his friends. "Run! Get back to town," he shouted, knowing they needed to escape. As chaos erupted, Jack found himself face to face with the gang leader. In a blur of motion, fists flew, and Jack defended himself, relying on his training to fend off the attacks. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He was fighting not just for his own safety, but for the safety of the entire town. "Go, Jack!" Sarah cried out, her voice cutting through the din of the fight. "We'll find our way back." With a fierce resolve, Jack broke away from the skirmish, dodging punches and pushing through the throng of bikers. He could hear the sound of motorcycles revving in the distance, a menacing reminder that the gang was willing to go to any lengths to maintain their grip on the town. Finally breaking free, Jack sprinted through the underbrush, his heart racing as he fought to catch his breath. Adrenaline surged through his veins, fueling his determination to reach safety and warn the townspeople about the impending danger. As he made his way back to town, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The confrontation had escalated far beyond what he had anticipated, and the gang would not take their humiliation lightly. They would come back, and he had to prepare for what was to come. Arriving at the community center, Jack found Sarah, Tommy, and Mark anxiously waiting for him. Their faces lit up with relief, but it was quickly replaced by concern as Jack recounted the encounter. "We need to warn everyone. The gang knows we're onto them, and they're not going to back down." Together, they devised a plan to hold an emergency meeting. They needed to inform the townspeople of the escalating threat and discuss their next steps. Jack could feel the weight of their collective fear, but he also sensed the determination to stand united against the encroaching darkness. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town, Jack knew that their fight was far from over. But with every passing moment, the bonds among the community strengthened, and the resolve to reclaim their home ignited a flame of hope within him. The battle against the gang had only just begun, and they would face it together, ready to defend what was rightfully theirs. The atmosphere in the small desert town was electric with tension as Jack Reeves and his allies prepared for the confrontation they had been anticipating. After the recent skirmish with the biker gang, Jack knew that the stakes had escalated dramatically. The gang's threat loomed larger than ever, and he felt a palpable urgency to act before they could strike again. With the support of Sarah, Tommy, Mark, and the entire community behind him, Jack was determined to take the fight to the heart of the gang's operations. The abandoned mine, which had become the gang's stronghold, was the focus of their plan. Over the past few weeks, Jack and his allies had gathered intelligence, learning that the bikers were using the mine not just as a hideout, but as a hub for illegal activities, including drug trafficking and weapons smuggling. Armed with this knowledge, Jack knew that they had to expose the gang's operations and dismantle their power. On the day of the raid, a palpable sense of anticipation filled the air. The townspeople gathered at the community center, where Jack laid out the plan. He could see the mix of fear and determination in their faces. This was not just a fight for their town, it was a fight for their future. "Today, we're taking back our town," Jack said, his voice resonating with conviction. "We've gathered evidence and support from the sheriff's office. They're going to back us up, but we need to be smart and stay united. Our goal is to gather enough evidence to shut down their operation and send a message that we won't tolerate their reign of terror any longer." Sarah stood beside him, her gaze steady. "We've worked too hard to let fear control us. If we stick together, we can do this." Tommy nodded enthusiastically, his youthful energy infectious. "Let's show them what we're made of." With a plan in place, they divided into teams. Jack would lead a group into the mine while another team would set up a perimeter outside to prevent any bikers from escaping. As they prepared to leave, Jack felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was it, there was no turning back now. The convoy of townsfolk arrived at the mine, the setting sun casting an ominous glow over the entrance. The air was thick with dust and anticipation. As they approached, Jack's heart raced. He knew the danger they faced, but he also felt the weight of the town's hopes resting on his shoulders. "Stay sharp," Jack instructed as they reached the mine entrance. He gestured for his group to move quietly, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The sound of dripping water echoed off the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. Each step they took brought them closer to the heart of the gang's operation. Inside, the mine was a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, remnants of a bygone era. As they ventured deeper, Jack's group stumbled upon a cache of crates stacked haphazardly against the wall. "This must be it," he whispered, motioning for everyone to gather around. They opened a crate to find it filled with packaged drugs, clear evidence of the gang's illegal activities. Jack's heart sank at the reality of what they were facing. "We need to document this," he said, pulling out his phone to take pictures for the authorities. Suddenly, a noise echoed from further down the tunnel, a sound of voices and engines. Jack's instincts kicked in. "We need to move. They're coming." Panic surged through the group as they hurried to find cover. Jack led them deeper into the mine, the echoes of laughter and revving motorcycles growing louder. They crouched behind a pile of crates, holding their breath as the bikers approached. "Let's get this stuff loaded up and get out of here," one biker said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Those townsfolk think they can mess with us. They'll regret it when we're done." Jack exchanged glances with his team, fear mingling with determination. They could hear the gang discussing their plans, unaware that their conversations were being overheard. Jack knew they had to gather more evidence, but the risk of being discovered was rising. "On my count, we need to make a move," Jack whispered, gauging their positions. "We'll create a distraction and then push forward. We have to gather everything we can." The tension in the air was palpable as Jack counted down. 3, 2, 1, go. He led the charge, bursting out from behind the crates and yelling, "Police! You're under arrest!" The sudden chaos erupted as the bikers scrambled, caught off guard by the unexpected intrusion. Jack's heart pounded as he rushed forward, adrenaline fueling his actions. The bikers reacted quickly, but Jack's training kicked in. He fought with the precision and skill he had honed during his service. The sounds of scuffling and shouting echoed through the mine as Jack and his team engaged in a chaotic battle with the gang members. Outside, the backup from the sheriff's office arrived, sirens blaring as law enforcement poured into the area. Jack could hear the commotion outside, but he remained focused on the fight before him. "Stay together," he shouted to his team, pushing forward through the mine's darkness. They fought valiantly, using the element of surprise to their advantage. The gang members were outnumbered, but their fierce reputation fueled their aggression. In the midst of the chaos, Jack caught sight of the gang leader, his face twisted with rage as he fought back against a deputy. Jack knew this was the moment to confront the man who had tormented their town for so long. With a fierce determination, Jack moved towards the leader, dodging punches and weaving through the melee. "This ends now," he shouted, finally facing the man who had threatened so many lives. The gang leader sneered, his eyes filled with defiance. "You think you can take me down? You're just a soldier playing hero." Jack responded with a swift jab, catching the leader off guard. The fight was fierce, a dance of power and resilience as they exchanged blows. Each punch carried the weight of Jack's determination to protect his community. As the fight continued, the mine trembled with the force of the battle. Jack's team was gaining ground, but they needed to finish this once and for all. In a moment of desperation, Jack seized the opportunity and delivered a powerful blow, sending the gang leader sprawling to the ground. "Get up!" Jack growled, standing over him. "You've terrorized this town long enough." With the gang leader incapacitated, Jack felt a surge of triumph, but the victory was short-lived. The mine began to shake violently, dust falling from the ceiling as the structure threatened to collapse. "We have to get out," Jack shouted, urgency fueling his movements. "Everyone out now," he commanded, rallying his team. They rushed towards the exit, adrenaline pumping through their veins as they narrowly escaped the chaos behind them. Just as they emerged into the sunlight, a deafening explosion rocked the mine, sending debris flying and echoing through the desert. The force of the blast knocked Jack off his feet, and he quickly scrambled to his feet to help his teammates. "Is everyone all right?" he yelled, surveying the scene. The sheriff's deputies were gathering around, ensuring that the remaining bikers were apprehended. The mine, once a symbol of fear, now lay in ruins, a testament to the battle that had just unfolded. As the dust settled, Jack caught his breath, a mix of relief and adrenaline coursing through him. They had won, but the victory felt bittersweet. The gang had been a powerful force in their lives, and though they had taken a significant step towards reclaiming their town, Jack knew that the threat was far from over. In the aftermath, Jack and his team provided statements to the sheriff, sharing the evidence they had gathered. The sheriff, a look of respect in his eyes, acknowledged the bravery of Jack and the townsfolk. "You've done something remarkable today," he said. "We'll take this evidence and build a case against the gang. This is just the beginning." Despite the sheriff's words, Jack felt a twinge of apprehension. The gang leader would not easily accept defeat. The message he had received after the fight at the gas station echoed in his mind. This was merely a battle in a larger war. Later that evening, as the town gathered to celebrate their victory, Jack took a moment to reflect on what had transpired. He had come to this town as a soldier, but now he felt more like a guardian, a protector of the people he had grown to care for deeply. Sarah and Tommy found him standing at the edge of the crowd, watching as the townsfolk shared laughter and relief. "You did it, Jack," Sarah said, her eyes shining with admiration. "You really did it." Jack smiled, but his heart was heavy. "We won today, but we can't let our guard down. The gang will come back, and we need to be ready." Tommy, filled with youthful optimism, chimed in, "We'll be ready, Jack. We'll keep fighting." As the celebration continued, Jack felt a sense of belonging wash over him. The town had united against a common enemy, and he had found purpose in protecting this community. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was ready to face them, standing shoulder to shoulder with those he had come to consider family. As the stars twinkled above the desert sky, Jack realized that this fight was not just about defeating the gang, it was about building a resilient community that could stand together against adversity. He was no longer just a soldier, he was part of something greater, a movement for change, a beacon of hope in the darkness. The road ahead would not be easy, but Jack Reeves was committed to his new home and the people he had fought so hard to protect. Together, they would navigate the trials ahead, reinforcing their strength and resilience in the face of any threat. The battle for their town was far from over, but united, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.